Hello and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine the best movie for any given year. We are, of course, this season doing 2020. Can you believe it? Such a great year, 2020. Movies out the wazoo. Joining me on this adventure are my two best friends, and they are competing to win points and my heart to be best friend overall. First up is Mike. Mike, hello. How are you? How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing dandy. I'm ready to hear. I'm ready to play. I'm ready to be here. That wasn't... I know I feel mean to our deaf listeners.
Okay, Ryan. That's going to be another point for Ryan. Ryan is up 3-0 at this point. If you want to know why, go back, listen to the Patreon episode. If you can get it through legitimate means. Stop pirating our stuff. Somebody, I'm sure, who does it. Ryan, you are also here. Welcome, bud. Why do you think you should be best friend?
To you, because number one, I'm not offensive towards deaf people. With literally the first thing that I said.
Good start.
Also, Patreon members or people who want to be on Patreon, you can do it through the Patreon website, or it's official. Our Patreon is now on Roku TV, so go ahead and get it there as well. Finally.
We have answered the prayers of so many of the listeners, and we're provided our hookup through Roku TV. Well, you know, for 2020, we are not sure what movies are the bracket movies yet, right? So we're just watching some of the movies that we really liked. And Mike, you were the one who picked Sound of Metal. Did you pick it because you had seen it and liked it, or because you heard good things about it? What occasioned the pick?
Had not
now,
seen
Greg
it.
just said heard things that you liked, Mike. Please be careful and don't be offensive.
I'm sorry I stuttered. I had not... Did I stutter? Yes. I had not seen it before this week. I saw the trailer a while back, and big fan of Riz Ahmed, and I was like, holy shit, that movie looks dope. I want to see this guy in more things. So there we go.
I know him from the Star Wars, Rogue One.
Yes, he's in Rogue One. Nightcrawler. Because I was trying to think this, because there's a lot of stuff I haven't seen. But yeah, he was in Nightcrawler. With
he played
Joel.
Nightcrawler on the X-Men. I didn't really understand Rogue One because I didn't see the...
Rogue Zero, I guess, Ryan.
Fuck, the one with no calories.
Right.
Rogue Free.
Rogue Free.
Mark.
But yeah, like he, it's the night of, I think, would be his biggest.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just we're not really allowed to talk about it. But yeah, he's definitely on the list of like. I hope somebody makes a movie soon where it's a full-on actors clinic and he just gets to go off, you know. And I do.
You don't think that was Venom for him?
I don't think that was Venom for him. That was what's her name from Parks and Rec? Money, please.
Jenny Slate.
Jenny Slate, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Oh yeah, signed by Utes.
Signed by Subi Bits.
But yeah, on the list of people who deserve a movie that's just basically their performance filmed, he was definitely on that list. And I'm glad that he got this, you know.
And his torso filmed.
Oh yeah.
Let's face it. This guy he's got a torso. Well, we're gonna have a chance to talk about him. Have either of you had exposure to? I know this is a director. What's his name?
Darius
Marder. I know it's his first directing movie, but he has written some others. Did you see either of the other ones of his that was either the writer or the co-writer on?
His writing partner, Derek France. I've seen his movies before, but no, I'm totally new to the Marder family, which is crazy because if you watch the credits to this movie, the last name Marder is all up and down this shit. And I don't know if that does that give me warm feelings or is that amateur as fuck? Like hire some different people.
It's hard to say, and I feel like we're gonna know the answer to that in a few years as what a cop out that is to say. But this is a fresher experience than most that we get. You know, usually we kind of at least have some amount of time with our finger in the air to test the winds of pop culture. But this movie was released in theaters for a very short time. It made, not joking, $6,000, and then was released a little bit wider on social or on streaming just a couple weeks ago. So it'll be things like the fact that their whole fucking family made this movie will be, you know, something that is either the beginning of something or
it's a pretty cool family. Weird. My family just does puzzles, but they're like, guys, this year for Christmas, let's all just make a movie.
Let's just make a movie, you know, just about the things that we lose and what it means and everything.
Well, I guess if you want a group of people who are going to die for streaming, make them martyrs.
Oh, yeah, like martyrs. Mike. That's going to be 1 sweet point for...
I didn't want to say anything and lose the chance to get that point for doing nothing.
Just let it happen. Just let it happen. Well, obviously, we are dying to talk about this movie, and so we are going to do that on the other side of these wonderful commercials.
Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp, he's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out.
The Sound of Metal tells the story of a rock drummer, Ruben, who is losing his hearing and must learn to live with his new hearing loss while confronting all his old demons. Chief among them, an addiction to heroin, which, not to get political, but don't do heroin, everybody. The film follows Ruben as he parts from his girlfriend Lou and begins the hard work of rebuilding his life and learning how to sit with the silence he now finds himself in. The movie asks, how do we deal with loss? And how do we deal with never getting back those things that were most precious to us? Along the way, the audience is transported by Riz Ahmed's transcendent performance and rookie director Darius Marder's ambitious sound design, both of which deliver the audience an experience that is at once moving and powerful even as it embraces the still and, yes, finally, the quiet. Gentlemen, calling a movie an actor's showcase is often pejorative to the rest of the film. A, is this movie an actor's showcase for Riz Ahmed? And B, is that totally okay if you want to tell an intimate story?
I think it's okay. I think it's a little weird for us in this situation. Yeah, I think that it's rare for an actor showcase to make it into the Elite Eight of any given year.
Okay,
You know, like I think that more often than not, that when you capital D direct the hell out of something, it's going to make it into that Elite Eight, and it gives us so much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's weird for us because this sort of thing kind of went away.
Yeah.
You know, like this is like a. This is 70s,
franchise.
80s. Yeah. I mean, maybe one day we'll get like Star-Lord having to leave the Guardians and battle his space drug demons, and then we'll get like a quiet Marvel movie.
Maybe coming to terms with the fact that he's bi. Didn't Marvel just announce that he's bi? Like, you know.
My God, what would you pay to watch Chris Pratt's reaction to that news?
But no, because. But I like to. If you think about it, because when I'm. Wait, does that mean.
Management. Call my management.
Time to pray on it, Chris.
I think this is harder. It's to like talk about what Marder. It's harder to talk about Marder and what he is capable of, and it's so much easier. And I would like to talk about what Riz Ahmed is capable of just taking over a movie and like absolutely destroying, like great performance. But I also think that like with that comes a director who lets him and you know like make sure to set him up for all of that.
Yeah, it's not just like you could see me directing so big and I'm only talking about the biggest issues. I do think this one definitely is an actor's, I forget the word you said there, Greg.
Actor's showcase.
An actor's showcase. It's definitely that, and I think there are boring actor's showcase movies or movies that are like, well, they did great, but then nobody else really rose to it. But this movie is obviously centered on Ruben and Riz, but everybody else, it's like supporting players in the perfect sense that like everybody does what they need to do and lets them go. And I don't think it's boring. I think intimate is a great word, and that's what this is, and that is okay, and it doesn't make it like any less artistic.
Is this Paul Raci? Is that how you say it? R-A-C-I? Is this Paul Raci erasure? Is this like by just talking so much about Riz Ahmed's performance? Are we forgetting performances like Olivia Cook and
and Paul Raci is Joe?
Joe, yeah.
And Joe,
who
crushes.
In somebody else's quote actor showcase unquote, like is delivering the news and the weather.
And yeah, I think everybody Riz interacts with, I don't think there is a weak link in this movie. It's just obviously the movie's not trying to see like, what's Joe's interiority? It's just how does Joe react to Riz? And I think that's okay because that's exactly the kind of story this movie's trying to create.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times with a movie like this, then you'll get flat characters who nobody took the time to like cast well or write good because this is Ruben's show.
And because they're going to be in the movie for like 3 minutes.
Right. And they only service this particular type of story or like whatever they need to do in that moment. But with this, I think that we have incredible casting, incredible writing with fleshed out characters who still only serve Ruben's story.
Yeah.
There's not B plot lines, you know. It's not like Paul Racy,
yeah,
his name, has like an affair with one of the students, and then there's
this
drama
is Joe,
there.
who's like the leader of the sort of the recovering,
the cragged face wise man.
Yeah,
but
who just looks like so perfect, like a piece of leather just left out all day.
Just his non-reactions to stuff, you're like, is that a good non-reaction or is that a he's mad non-reaction? But like, it is slightly different.
Sometimes it fucking rules to not cast big name actors in every part. Sometimes it rules to cast like, you know, the person who's actually been through it. And all these people are serving Ruben's story only, but you can feel their lives outside of that. You know, you can feel that they are three-dimensional, and we just get a little glimpse of this shit. And that this movie, you have to be able to build a world without having the Star Wars crawl in the beginning.
Right.
You know, you have to not let people know that you're building a world and yet still do it.
Yeah, like all the details you see of him early in the movie where he's like so regimented in his morning routine. That means so much more. At first, that just seems like you're watching him do his morning routine, but that is, like you said, Ryan, world building. Because later you find out this is a guy who can't stop moving for even like 1 minute. When he's making his coffee, that phase where they say that you should just let the aromas like sort of enter your nostrils and take a moment to reflect on the good smell of coffee, he drops down to do like burpees.
Respect.
Always grinding.
Not just the
Greg,
coffee.
why'd you let this bro on the show? Look at this guy.
But yeah, I mean, that's world building. That their band is like trying to figure out what's small but about to get mid-tier. Blackgammon. Yeah, and like the people are responding. So there's a story there. His friend he makes who helps sell all of his equipment, and she gets the tattoo. Jen, she gets the tattoo. She obviously has stuff going on because why would
Jen's
you just
fucking rad, dude?
Yeah, like everybody has just enough life that they would go on, and like I think a worse movie and a lot of like actors showcases the predictability. I thought he was going to end up with the teacher, the elementary school teacher, when he's deaf Billy Madison-ing.
Mike, I guarantee he does. It's just later, but I guarantee he does. Everything that you thought was going to happen at the end of this movie, it does happen at the end of this guy's story. It just doesn't happen in this movie because this movie's not, even though this is a rookie director, it's not an amateur effort. And so they just don't do things that like would be too movie-like. But I guarantee he goes back and he gets with that chick and he takes
they
over
vibed.
like that. Yeah, they vibed hard, dude. The second he saw her, or the second she saw him, she was like, hey, what's up?
I think that that director is doing this the entire movie, though, of like, they vibe and then we don't have them hook up. It's sort of like what he's into. Even right from the very beginning, the fact that like this metal musician wakes up in the morning and drinks athletic greens, you know, and like does push-ups and makes his girlfriend breakfast and coffee, as opposed to just like getting blowjobs and doing drugs and all that stuff. Also, he was like, he's trying to wake up Lou.
Yeah.
And I for sure thought she was dead.
Oh yeah.
They're in a band. He's trying, like he's pushing her. She's fucking dead because that's how music, like rock and roll movies work.
There should be like some blood coming out of her nose.
Yeah. Did you notice the exact?
He's fucking with us the entire time.
The exact area he pokes her with the drumsticks is like in the arm that she scratches when she's with him. Yeah, like that's like exactly where he's poking at her.
Oh shit!
In that,
Greg.
In that, yes. Okay, wait, hang on. Good put a point here.
That's what it's what's great about this movie is it's not a metal drummer. He builds a specific Ruben, like you just said, because we all have like our own connotations, what we think of when we think of this kind of musician. And it really is this guy, Ruben's specific story, not any metal drummer's story. And I think that's very important, because at first I was like, okay, so he was also a heroin addict? Are we just trying to kitchen sink everything that's happening? But it all does weave together, I think.
It's interesting the way that unfolds, though, isn't it? Because at first you're like, okay, he can't hear. Obviously, that's very upsetting. But he seems like there seems to be like an extra level of upset that he is. And it takes, and when you realize it's because he's like, okay, drumming is the thing that like keeps me straight mostly. And so I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't have that. So the not having my hearing, it does suck. But there's a bigger problem. And honestly, that right in the beginning, that foregrounds, he has like kind of the right attitude about his hearing, which is that like the hearing is only good in itself. It's not good in itself. It necessitates something.
Right.
And so like he right away, is worried not about not having hearing, but about the thing that is going to cost him to not have.
Going back to Marder real quick, not only did he cast Riz and Olivia, but he also decided who was going to do the sound design.
Yeah.
And he also decided to not hire somebody to write the score. Like, that decision right there is insane. Like, I'm going to fuck with people's hearing so much, I will never give them the false thought of, like, strings in the back. Like, John Williams is not going to come in and save any scene.
Right.
No.
I'm going to do it. And all of that stuff, even though there's not, like, a ton of crane shots and there's not a ton of, like, Spielbergian moments. Like,
a lot of natural beauty in the movie, though.
The director is setting like all of that stuff too, and he's saying that like I want this to be a very specific mood, and I think that restraint if you're a director, you want to have those moments, you want to have your storm on Normandy, at least a couple times in the movie, and for him to just say no, I think is sort of what shows that like he's got this down, even though it's his first movie.
Do you think this is obviously this feels like a major coming out party, right? Like this must be the beginning of something for Darius Marder, right? Do you think this is going to make a splash and make a name for him?
I think so, and I hope so, because I'm nervous about movies like this.
Yeah.
Because it made $6,000 in the theaters?
But I hope everybody goes, but look at the year it was. Like,
yeah.
And I also hope that, like, I'm sure he will get a Marvel movie next year, but I hope he gets to make a few more movies before that happens. Like, I want these young indie directors to be able to keep making the kinds of movies they should make before studio systems swallow them up.
Mark. Yeah, I mean, I am hopeful for him. And honestly, it reminded me of another movie from this year, which is like more action-packed than, which is First Cow. In that, like, it is kind of slow and contemplative in the way the First Cow is, but First Cow is even slower than this. So I don't know, maybe like there's still room for kind of like slow, intimate cinema out there. The
other movie too is The Vast of Night, which is another Amazon Prime movie that is so good, guys. Please go see it. It's not going to make our 2020 bracket, and that's a bummer. But it's just doing so much with so little, and just being patient and figuring out how to work around budget. And then these fucking directors are just going to get all of the budget they ever imagined, and and that magic goes away.
Yeah.
And I think that even though this feels like you could watch this and you could be like, oh, this should have been a Hallmark movie, this should be a TV show, this should be this is just like a biopic, whatever. This guy's doing a lot with a little that you may not notice. There's definitely talent here, and I think it does gain a lot from just being a movie, right? Like it's nice that it's not longer. I like that there are dimensions to it that we don't really see. That it ends maybe before the narrative arc seems to end for the main character. Those all seem like strengths that it has. There's a ton of decisions made just because of the length. Like this guy was like, this is going to be a movie, and I could see how I wanted the movie to be shorter when I look at it as a whole, but when I look at each individual part, I think there should be 20 more minutes to each like act. Right. Totally. And he had to like chop all that shit out and say, no, you know what? I'm making it 20 or a 2-hour feature film.
Yeah, if this was a show, I'd be so bummed to see that the end is perfect, because Ruben takes off his implants, which I did not know the whole movie you could just do that. I thought you'd have to go back to the doctor. So I got freaked out because he's metalhead, so I was just gonna rip him out of his head. And then it's finally quiet. I don't need to see him. then go be happy with the kids and start dating the elementary school teacher. And then like to be like, see that one powerful moment? Here's all the proof that it was powerful. Like to end there.
Right. And the other thing is it doesn't matter if he does go back to that school, and it doesn't matter if he ends up with that woman, because all that matters is that he achieved, if only for a moment, that stillness. And no matter what he does in addition to that, like everything else kind of has fallen away, and he's managed to like achieve that centeredness of himself. So I think that he'll have that to that's the perfect ending, really. It doesn't matter what else he does with his life. That's the perfect ending. And that is the perfect ending to the segment, wouldn't you say? I would, definitely. Thanks, Greg. When we come back, we're going on a little hike to Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore!
Yes. Mount Rushmore. 4 famous presidents who, between them, I believe, owned over 300 slaves. Only 2 of them actually owned slaves, but I think if you added all that up, that'd be probably close to 100 slaves per president. Something to think about. So what we're going to do is we're going to take down all of those presidents, and we are going to replace them with fictional drummers.
Non-slave owning drummers.
I'll tell you this right off the bat. If you bring me a slave owning drummer, I'm going to say like, no, that's the whole reason why we dynamited the original mountain. Get out of here, you jerk. Like that.
I got to say, when the board pitched this, I was like, that's stupid. This is bullshit. There are 0. And then after going to my thinking hill and sitting at it, my goodness, what a fucking rich, ripe area for discussion.
Maybe the board knows what they're doing sometimes.
I have stolen an idea from once and future host Mike, and I have myself a drummer that will get you 3 points if you come up with it, because I'm thinking of the perfect pop culture drummer. So good luck to you, friends. May the fortune favor you. All right, let's start with Mike. Mike, who is to you an iconic fictional drummer?
I'm going to say the linchpin, but I do want to, before I say that I stole that from once and future host Ryan, just so all credit is given everywhere. Go team.
And probably I did it first, don't you think, Ryan?
If we're being honest, I stole it from Greg.
Yeah, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan, for being honest. This is my idea. I'm a smart boy. I'm a good boy.
Animal.
Yes,
no
there it
build
is.
Up. It has to be Animal.
Of course.
Wait, that's the 3-pointer?
1, 2, 3 points for Mike.
Oh my god!
He is,
of course,
based on the most fictional real life drummer, Keith Moon. And he's just arms go everywhere. He doesn't give a fuck. Like when you think of like the stereotypical drummer, it's just they base their life and personality on Animal, the puppet Muppet.
It's all motion. None of it really makes sense. Like, I think probably most drummers would tell you that the fundamentals aren't really there with Animal. He's not a metronome. That's not it. But it's the energy. It's sort of the joy of being alive, the love of the sticks. That's what you get with Animal.
Okay, so typically, like the one that gets 3 points is like something that Greg loves that's off the beaten path, not the most obvious thing. But I'll just keep playing this fucking fake ass game show that you guys are doing. I like Animal because when it comes to drumming fundamentals, he brings the fun, the duh, and the mental. That dude is crazy as shit.
Ryan, that's pretty good. Pretty good, Ryan. You kind of made that your own. Ryan, so now the most obvious one has been taken off the board. But are there any other drummers, or should we just call it a segment and each go back to our respective rooms?
Who doesn't just go doom, but also doom, 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 doom,
Not many drummers.
It is Guy Patterson. He wears sunglasses, and he is in a little band called The Wonders.
The Oneaters.
Is Spartacus.
Called in because he basically could kind of play the drums, and the original Oneaters drummer broke his arm. But then a little bit better because he didn't have to steal the spotlight. Their original drummer treated every song as if it was Wipeout, and not every song is. And he was.
I disagree.
He was just there to like lay in a fundamental beat, and nothing too flashy.
To still kick it up without stealing the spotlight, be like, Jimmy, you wrote a good song if you played it 5 times faster than what you think this ballad should be.
Do you guys remember the sweet, sweet time of 1996 where Tom Everett Scott and Jonathan Schaech were about to become the new Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt?
I still think they will be someday.
Sure.
Maybe, this 2021, it could be their year. Ryan, well, I have to give it to you because I'm an Oneaters fan from way back. Hey, wasn't that our fan? All right, Mike, who do you got? We have two up on the mountain.
Famously a drummer. Famously, I don't know if we ever see him drum in the movies. Maybe once, but he always sure does have sticks in his hand and will air drum the shit out of everything. And I think Garth Algar deserves to be on this goddamn mountain.
Garth Algar. So yeah, he would clearly be the drummer if they actually had any sort of band. Do we actually see him doing drumming at any point?
In one of the movies, he animal style goes nuts on the drums.
Yeah,
it might be in his own head. But
because Dana Carvey can actually drum, right?
I'm sure he can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on full Steve Carell can ice skate level. Like,
Yeah.
you have to write this in the script.
All right, that's pretty good.
He's making the faces, which, if we're talking about drummers, the faces they make, man, it's like they're having a lot of mini strokes in a row, and he does all the faces while he's playing.
I don't know about Mount Rushmore, but he's definitely on Mound maybe, because I think he may be one of the best drummers. I want to be picky and choosy. Ryan, who is another great pop culture drummer?
Before this mountain gets insane, with a lot of crazy people, I have to bring up Andrew Neiman from Whiplash.
His name is Whiplash, right?
Somebody who... I had to bring up Jonathan Whiplash.
Whiplash from the movie Whiplash.
Who is just absolutely abused into becoming the greatest drummer of all time.
And he a lot of times when we think of music dum-dums like me, as you know, I'm a music dum-dum. When I think of people who really drum their little hearts out, I'm thinking of the rockers and the rollers, right? I'm thinking of the heavy metalers. But he's kind of got that big band jazz, and that is, I think, for people in the know, is that the real epitome of drumming?
I also thought that jazz was grab one stick that's sort of a stick and then one stick that's not, and just be like...
One stick is just like a brush. You were just painting, and you're just now I'm drumming with it. Yeah.
But according to this movie, if you play jazz, then you have to be bashing everything as loud as you can, as fast
That's
as
Whiplash style, baby.
And that's what you have to say at the end of every
Whiplash
song.
all day.
Hey, that's Whiplash style, baby. All right. Well, yeah, I'm going to put it right on the mountain. Joe Whiplash from the movie Whiplash. Mike.
Let's talk about history's first drummer. First in our hearts.
Jesus?
First in history. Pre-Jesus, because he drummed to let everybody know Jesus was born and went pa-rum-pum-pum-pum. It is the little drummer boy, one of the most famous pop culture drummers of all time. You see him every Christmas. You think about him throughout the year. The little drummer boy.
A lot of times when people see footage of women screaming in the front row of a show, they think it's Elvis, but it's actually the little drummer boy coming out on Ed Sullivan doing his first gig.
Check it out. They were like, listen, a new special baby dropped, and we're all going to fucking roll and check out this cool baby. And this kid was like, I'm going to come. And they're like, all right, here's the deal, though. This baby is so fucking rad that you got to bring stuff for the baby just to get a good look at it. And he's like, I have literally nothing except for this drum. And he's like, you know what I'll do? I'll just bust out a drum solo for a baby.
When my sister was giving birth, I barged in with a snare and
how was it received?
Just a drum roll. Oh, they did not know what to do with it. I think they were so taken aback with my skill.
Well, it's hard to imagine somebody outclassing the drummer boy. But Ryan, do you have anybody? I'm going to put him temporarily on the top of the maybe heap. I want to see what else we have to choose from. Do you have anyone better than Little Drummer Boy? Lil Drummer Boy is his SoundCloud name.
This person is probably a little bit less famous, but I think more important to us. At a certain point, Paul Rudd looks up and he's like, where is that guy? And that guy is Antony. And he's inside. He's a giant ant in the movie Ant-Man and Wasp, fucking rocking out on a drum set like a drummer would.
Now, here's why I am not going to go with Anthony. The electronic drums, I don't like them.
Ooh.
I like old school And what's older school than Little Drummer Boy up on the mountain, Mark? Little Drummer Boy right up there. Ryan, tell us, who is the Mount Rushmore of iconic drummers?
This electric thing, that means you would have hated my final one, which is Tech Maor, the drummer for Figure and Dan and the Modal Nodes. I don't even know if that is drums, but I don't know.
Space
It looks like it looks like what squids would touch in the future.
It's
I guess.
space drums.
Your fictional drummers, Mount Rushmore, is Animal, Guy Patterson from That Thing You Do, Andrew Neiman from Whiplash, and the Little Drummer Boy from
The Little Drummer
all the
Boy.
hit songs, Little Drummer Boy.
That's a super group. Get the four of them together on one stage, and that's going to be magic. An all-drum band. Have they even done that yet?
Who doesn't
Oh
love
my
that?
God.
That's all I listen to.
Drum band. Just put the check in the mail. All right. When we come back, we're getting back to our little drummer boy, Ruben. So much hinges on the relationship between Lou and Ruben, whose ship name is Lubin, which is pretty sexy. How much truth do they bring as a couple in various phases of the relationship in the first act and in the third act?
I think that I think it's pretty economical that the first act, where it's like, here's your normal morning and normal day. That's all you get. And now here's the fucked up day. Like, he could have probably have done that like 3 or 4 more times, but because Ruben's schedule especially is so regimented, we only need that first day to let us know what'll be crazy after then. And the way they dote on each other, if you show us that too much, we'll start to be like, this is unhealthy. Instead of showing us just that once, you're like, maybe they are a good couple. And throughout the rest of the movie, you're thinking about it and go, maybe they were always unhealthy.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember now after finishing the movie. What we should do is we should do a podcast after every act.
Ooh.
You know, and then match them up later. But I thought that they were, I think what I'm going to guess is that I thought that they were good together for a certain reason, but young and dumb. And that led to me thinking that when a French guy says at the end, who is this? That, you know, Lou had found a French guy to fuck. You know, like it was her dad. But that's not the issue with the thing, the relationship. The issue wasn't that she wanted to go off and fuck other people. It's that they were so tight, so close in this growing, arcing period of their life.
And the period is all of his sobriety, and it seems like by the end of the movie, perhaps the period right after her mom has taken her own life.
Right.
Yeah.
So they knew each other like those are not great times to get with somebody.
Because they both looked at each other as the cure to the thing instead of dealing with the thing.
Yeah.
Because his anger issues are still there. That's why Joe says, we're trying to fix this, and points between his head. And Lou scratches her arm when Ruben's around. She says, in a very fucked up version of, if you're a bird, I'm a bird, she says, if you hurt yourself, I hurt myself, which is not a good sign of love. But when he is not around, she doesn't do that anymore.
But I mean, like and it like totally heals, and then she starts the first time you see her do it is as soon as he wakes her up in the beginning of the movie, and then you see her do it again when he wakes up from his nap or whatever, and they're talking, and she starts scratching her arm again.
And this is not me saying what I usually say about how we should hire one lawyer to handle all 3 of our divorces, get a motorcycle. We each buy a motorcycle.
Mike and I don't even want to get divorces, Ryan.
Okay. Well, yeah. Say that now that we're recording. But I don't think that it's just that they only saved each other. You know, like that. That's not what the relationship only relied upon. But it's how it started, and they never gave themselves the chance to see what life would be like without each other, you know? And
because they really didn't save each other, right? Like they clung to each other, and that prevented either one of them from like going to the shore, because they just like, And
their world is so insular. Like they obviously like people like their band and people like them, but it's only them all of the time in that little van.
I think it was important for the movie and for all these realizations to not have a 5-piece metal band that's in a bus together or flying together and always hanging out with these other 3 guys. It was important that it was a 2-piece with them, and so they didn't know anything else. And so then you just reasonably assume that we are perfect for each other.
And
did you notice that when they perform together, even though they're performing together, it's very isolated? Like they each perform individually, and so they're not in the same song. They're kind of, and I get this. I wonder if this was supposed to be sort of also like maybe an analog for their sexual lives as well. That they're like, or they're just their relationship. That instead of being in the same thing, they're both kind of individually in their own version, of what their relationship.
I mean,
is.
I don't think it would have worked if the roles were reversed, if it was closer to White Stripes with the girl's the drummer, because Ruben has a literal wall in front of. If you play any other instrument, then it's a tiny guitar or a tiny harmonica or a tiny triangle if you're into the music that I'm into. But for him, it was 13 drums separating them that he got to hide behind.
Yeah, he hid behind and just stared at her so he could have the object of his affection. And I'm glad it only speckled this throughout the movie, but everybody who's into this band is so obviously into Lou. If they got a new drummer, they'd be like, "Oh, Ruben's gone," but that's fine. Like she is that, and so there's also some ego that, and they both seem to know she's the talent, right? And
it seems like she is kind of like ascendant at the end of the movie, right? Like she's now in Paris, and it's like she's kind of starting to do her own Emily Wells style, like looping while she performs on her own style thing.
Looping. I think they
looping.
That's the name
damn,
of the album for
Ryan.
sure.
Looping.
Halfway through the movie, Ruben watches her at some artsy fartsy experimental museum exhibit, and you see him. He rolls his eyes, and that's part like, oh, she's so wacky, but it's also part like, oh, I am insecure about this.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, I think it's more like, I'm done with all of this. I think I might be an adult now. Ruben says, I have to take care of some things, and what he's talking about is getting the trailer back, because you remember how awesome that was, and she was like, oh yeah, that little thing. That little time of our lives.
Well, her eyebrows are dyed. It's very interesting how they both change their things. Like she is a phase. She's dyeing her eyebrows. He has a tattoo of undies. He has a tattoo that says "Please kill me," which is like a reference to Richard Hell's Television, like very old school OG punk rock.
Also does not unbleach his hair.
No.
That hair stays bleached the entire
Even
movie.
though 6 months go by, it doesn't grow. It doesn't change how it's bleached.
That means he had his friend Jen bleach his hair again.
Leave the roots though; it looks cool.
And Jen's reaction would be like, "Oh, fucking do it!" But are you sure? Like, come on.
This doesn't feel like me taking care of you. This feels like me hurting you. By the way, that character Jen, that is exactly what I looked like in middle school. Like I looked exactly like
you were
Jen.
fly as hell, man.
It was like looking in a mirror.
Not a tattoo of a naked woman on your back, but a taped on picture, like a Playboy page on your back the entire time.
Do they have the most graceful Lou and Ruben? Do they have the most graceful breakup of all time?
Yes, and that's what made it feel real. That's how even though it was unhealthy, that it was like a close, good relationship for a while, because so gracious, the two of them. Like it's so adult, and so I loved that moment. Like it was heartwarming as they ended.
Mark, is that like one of the most romantic breakups of all time?
It's in a movie full of incredible moments and performances. Olivia Cook's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why,
I don't even know what you're
doing
talking.
This is crazy. Even though she's thanking him, just with her heart in her eyes, saying fucking thank you for stepping up and doing this. But saying what? No.
Olivia Cook?
I love you, man.
The only thing I'd seen her in was Ready Player One, which maybe I shouldn't besmirch anybody's ability.
You know what you
because
should
they were
see her
that
in?
Movie.
Check out Vanity Fair.
Okay.
Based on the William Makepeace Thackeray joint.
Did nothing that made me think she was a good up-and-comer should be acting in Ready Player One. But now I'm like, oh shit, she should be in everything, right?
Yeah, she's really, really good. And again, I mean, we talked about the way that this is kind of like Riz Ahmed's coming out party or whatever, but she is one of the other actors delivering an amazing performance. Either the second or third best performance in the entire movie. It almost feels ensemble-like, really, when you break it all down, except nobody else is given quite the amount of screen time to make that case, perhaps.
The other one, too, I want to throw out is Ms. Sound of Metal is with Ms. Queen's Gambit in Thoroughbreds, and the two of them are destructive together. Yeah, I mean, like, they both are great at the thing of, like, don't be normal, don't be weird. Ride the line, you know?
Don't be normal, don't be weird. Sounds like me talking to myself in middle school. Don't be too normal, don't be too weird. Don't be too normal, don't be too weird. When we come back, genres, they're great, but can we switch them? Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad, and perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic, and perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody. Keep watching them movies. Here I am, and I got a bunch of new Hollywood movies that I gotta make. Hollywood's way backed up. Not many movies. And I think I know the reason why. And that's because there's no original ideas, which are very difficult to come up with. So don't do it. That's what I say. Don't do it. Give up on it. Give up on everything difficult before you start feeling depressed about how your life is going. So I got these two young gentlemen, kind of like young Matt Damon, but like a middle-aged Ben Affleck, kind of like a puffy Ben Affleck. You guys are in my office, and you're going to pitch me a whole boatload, a whole short load of new movies. Is that correct?
We have been sitting here. We've been sitting here for 25 minutes just listening.
The preamble, it takes a long time for me to warm up. It's the first meeting of the day.
Yeah, you have to work out those vocal cords.
Exactly.
Pin down that accent.
Don't even talk to me until I've had my first few accents for the day. That's what you got to know about me. All right, well, here's the deal. We want movies. And we got, right now, the best way I think that you come up with a movie is you come up with an existing movie, and then you just switch the genre, right? Then nobody knows what you're even doing.
Genius.
All right, so here's the... What?
I think the best way it would work is that if Mike and I, sir, we tell you a movie that we want to remake, and then we pitch to you the genre that we should do.
No, that would never work in a million years, and I can't even begin to go into why what a stupid idea that is. This is why I have this big, nice office, and you guys got nothing. You've literally nothing. Either one of you don't have anything. All right. So, here's the deal. The movie that's doing boffo box office numbers, just crazy. Many tens of thousands of dollars. Emma, right, by a young Jane Austen. Have you heard of this? This young hip writer, Jane Austen. Oh, my God.
She's going places.
She knows what the kids like nowadays, and what the kids like nowadays? Balls.
Yeah, they do.
Balls, right? All night they want the balls. Okay.
Is that the genre?
It's not. No.
Ball play.
Don't be no. But probably this is going to be It's probably going to be wall-to-wall balls by the time you're done, because it's Emma. But what if Emma was a comic book action adventure movie? Pitch me on that now.
All right. Imagine if.
I don't want to imagine. I want to see it on the big screen, so I don't have to use my imagination.
All right. See on the big screen if.
Okay.
Your mind.
You're right. I'm doing that.
An Olsen non-twin dresses Wanda Maximoff, fucking freaked the fuck out, and all of a sudden said, no more mutants, House of Emma. And that is where we are.
Always meddling, Emma. It's like, leave well enough alone. Don't erase people from existence.
And so she is we're going through the beats of Emma. She's helping the mayor or whatever Mr. Hall is in the Emma story. But the whole time she's getting flashes of modernity and cars, and she's freaking out. And so she's trying to matchmake, and she's trying to figure out what is going on because her magic was so powerful. Even she's forgotten she's from the future.
The only thing that she can do is to go back through the dimensions, get Gwyneth Paltrow, share Alicia Silverstone from Clueless, share Horowitz, and all of a sudden we've got an Austin Vengers. We could probably work on that name of the team, the Emmaverse, and now they're here to fight crime.
Hey, now you're an Emma star. Get your ass done. Let's play balls. Wow. Okay. Though that already, I can tell that one is a hit. That I'm so excited with how this is going. Somebody get me Hollywood on the phone. Because
you were Hollywood.
Because there's a hit calling. For your purposes, I am Hollywood, okay? Don't you worry about me, but... Okay, now I'm going to randomly come up with a movie. Oh, mercy. All right, I'm very excited. I saw the movie and I'm like, whoa, hey, I'm very excited about this. Borat. The movie is Borat, the second movie, the second one, but it's a horror comedy.
Done.
He doesn't run into that Rudy Giuliani scene. There you go.
All right, very good. Borat, already pretty scary. All right. Now doing another. Have you heard of and do you remember the movie Tenet?
Yes. I will have seen it. I think that's how Tenet works.
You will have seen it in the future. Could you imagine if it were an action biker movie?
Yeah. So, JT Tenet, played by John David Washington, he has to get from L.A. to the San Fernando Valley, which is actually not that far away. But
with
he
traffic,
has is a motorcycle.
It'll take you some time.
And then Robert Pattinson starts throwing a bunch of backwards motorcycles at him, and he has to weave and wind his way through with a baseball bat.
It takes him 2 hours, but he finally figures out that if he just sits on the motorcycle backwards and drives it straight ahead, he can beat the tenants that are trying to take away the local children's boys and girls club, period.
Of America. Guys, that one's not a winner. They're not all going to be winners, you know? Some of them are going to be good.
Appreciate the honest feedback.
Some of them are going to be bad. That's why we have the meeting. We need to have the meeting to separate the wheat from the chaff. That's very important. All right. Now, here's what I'll do. I'll start with the genre. Wow. Action, apparently, as I'm thinking of genres, I'm realizing action biker is a very popular genre. That's amazing, but no, that's not gonna be it. How about the hit movie Onward as a mafia comedy?
Okay. Onward, they're trying to find their dead dad, right?
Yeah, they're trying to bring their dead dad back to life. It's a heartwarming story.
Okay, so they're trying to bring their dead dad back to life, as in what really matters. He is a mafioso, and even though he says it's all about family, he neglects his two sons.
I feel like, based on the history of mafia comedies, if we just call this Jane Austen's Onward, doesn't that work?
Because Jane Austen crushed the mafia comedy scene?
A comedy of mafia manners. Well, somebody call up Hollywood because we got another slate of delicious movies for them. We have done it again. We've made so many wonderful movies, and it says here, I got a note here, I'm supposed to give some of you points. So you, gestures at Mike, you're getting some points. There you go. Congratulations. Please leave those with the girl at the front.
The points or the note?
The points, if you could.
Okay.
The points are very important to me. When we come back, we are going to be having our final conversation about this movie, The Sound of Metal.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com. And it's everything you need that's related to Pop Filter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that Pop Filter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year, where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That Superhero Show, that's movie of the year, and that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review. Bye!
The Sound of Metal is a disability movie and an addiction recovery movie, both of which come with a pretty hefty bag of tropes and cliches. How well does the movie avoid them or turn them on their head?
I think by blending them, you could get like the worst train wreck version, but this does seem to be like greater than the sum of its parts. And
yeah, it'd be great if instead of the blending of being like the best of it all, it was the worst of it all, and they just race around screaming tropes as fast as they could.
And just an hour and 45 minutes, he just has like 18 relapses.
and what's interesting is how they treat him as an addict is that we don't see him relapse. And like Joe plays it out that like the heroin addiction, you're addicted to heroin, but there's something up here when he points it like, so it's always like you have to center yourself. So we don't see him like deftly clutching and
we see him do what Joe refers to as acting like an addict.
Right.
But
it is a creepy scene.
I have to tell you, it's refreshing to see a movie about somebody in recovery where they don't end up relapsing. Like, relapsing is part of the story, certainly, but it seems to be the only part of the story we get in dramas.
Yeah, I mean, like we only have 2 hours, and you have to make those acts. You know, like you have to hit your bumps of drama, and so relapsing is perfect. And I think the way that the movie does it is to give him a support system, like we talked about with Joe and the teacher and Lou, but not have anybody be magical ghosts, like magical spirits that like, will just guide him to do crazy things. Just like be there and say the things that anybody would. Not that you need to hear in order for a movie to become a movie, but that anybody would, so he can do it himself. The whole ending does not work if he had his hand held to get to that bench and enjoy the silence. You know, it has to be people in the background just acting normal so he can get there on his own.
I mean, Joe's sink or swim method where he like Ruben's up early and fixing the house, and Joe's like, "Don't you fucking do that."
Yeah,
that
was crazy, man.
Sit in a room and do nothing. I was like, he's helping, and then like because I was like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. It's because like he's all of that stuff is so he doesn't think about why he was an addict, right? And so to sit there and write or do nothing is to force
that. Fucked me up though, because now every time I'm doing a chore, I'm just gonna be looking around like, is anyone going to come and stop me and just make me not do chores, please?
But that's the whole basis of his pain, right? Is that he can't just sit and be still because there is something fundamentally kind of like hurting in him, and he won't resolve it. And instead of resolving it, he will do drugs. But if he can't do drugs, then he'll play music. And if he can't play music, then he'll fix things. Like he'll find some way. But what he has to do is he has to confront himself, and that's like what really he finally finds the space to do at the end of the movie.
and then
there was another addiction that like wasn't pointed out as hard as some of these other ones, like when he straight up says heroin, that's pointed out. But like there was another one which is in addiction to cool. Like I think that this togetherness is lame. I think that learning new things is lame. I think that writing is lame. I think that
he won't do the sign language at first. I was getting like pretty pissed off that he wouldn't like. They were clearly being like trying to teach him how to fucking do it so that he could communicate and be part of the house. And he's just like, no, I'm too cool.
Yeah.
Cool for sign language.
That's why this works so with the specificity, because he has the addiction, but he still thinks he will hear again. So why even try to learn this stuff?
Yeah,
and so that's part of the disability trope.
It's an addiction to control. You know, I am going to, and like. When you're addicted to heroin, you know you have that next fix. When you're addicted to control, then you have to put cochlear implants in front of you. And so I'm going to control the situation. The deafness will not control me, you know. But whatever, he's still, no matter how old he is, you know, and he's past the peak of, I think, most popular musicians, right? Like, I'm not sure if
he seems like 32 to 30.
So old.
I'm not sure he's ever going to make it, but like he still has that thing that he has not grown out of like whatever, man.
That's how he drums.
Drums are expensive.
And then on the disability side, he sells them to get those implants. I think a trope often is how isolated the disability can make you feel, and what I think is really genius in this movie, it still has that, but he is the most isolated part is at the meeting and the dinner. Everybody's joking. Although the deaf community, they're joking. He's most isolated, surrounded by the people. It's because they don't think it's a disability. So to still play those notes, but play them in a way that other movies haven't, I think was so fucking smart.
I mean, I think they could be more polite to the new person. You know, like maybe include the new person. But
they all kind of seem like assholes.
But,
so.
Well, no, I think that the truth is that this is not like the kind of place that has a bunch of new people all the time. And so, and like his chore is he has to learn how to be deaf.
That is a
like,
fucked up day one job.
They have like a lot of stuff that they have to do, and they have a way of living, and he's kind of just being inserted into it. So I think it takes a while for them to accept him. They're all addicts who are deaf as well. So like they're on the same journey too.
But what they're not doing is they're not going to say, oh, this cool new rock star who is deaf now but thinks he won't be. We're going to adjust the tone of our dinner, the dinner that we love because we get to hang out with each other just because he's here. They're like, fuck that, let's eat and party, and then they party in their own way. This is a guy who does think that he is like, you know, the Kool-Aid man in a lot of social situations. He comes in and he like, oh my God, it's Ruben. And they have their own shit going on. Ruben isn't cool to them, and they're not going to change shit.
And just by watching him move through the world, we know that's the effect he has, but we literally never see anybody react to him like that. It could just be imagined because of how he responds.
Well, Mike, you've been in bands before. You know that, like, when you're in a band, no matter how shitty, you just think that about yourself, even though there is no
just
reason
walk in
for you
slow-mo and take off sunglasses every bar you go into.
Speed round. It is time to enter into the speed round. Why does bleaching your eyebrows completely change everything about the way you look?
I didn't know that was Olivia Cook until an hour
Me
and a half
neither.
into the movie.
Ryan, I saw her in Vanity Fair. I saw her in Ready Player One. I'm like familiar with her, and it wasn't until she appears with like darker eyebrows that I was like, oh yeah, that's who that is.
It's
like,
it's a facial feature that seems subtle unless it's anything different than typical.
Right.
And then you're like, oh shit, what the fuck is wrong with you?
When I saw her, I wasn't like, I don't know who this actress is, and it's because the eyebrows are. I didn't notice the bleached eyebrows. I just knew for a fact I had no idea who this is.
It almost reminds me of when we watched, the couple samurai movies that we've watched, where there was the style for women to like kind of like shave their eyebrows and then draw them in 2 inches higher. Eyebrows, I think, honestly, the thing you do is like you just totally leave them alone. Nothing can improve over. Just stay the hell away from them. Dads, huh?
I don't know. What do you guys think about this, Dad?
That dad fucked up, dude. I don't know. Sorry to jump in before you can even answer the fucking question. This dad, I
get it.
I immediately thought of the dad who does not even appear in Piano Teacher. I'm getting real bad vibes off this dad.
Well, that's just because he's French. That's just the way they
I
do.
think that he thinks that he's doing a good job when Ruben comes over for brunch, and I think he has a lot to be sorry for, but it's really hard for dudes like this to apologize in a way where it feels like an apology. It's still like,
So much of your apology is saying how you didn't like me until a minute ago.
It was you then, and now it's you now, and I'm fucking
And
French.
the stuff he says about his late ex-wife, and like the way that the wife stole his daughter from him multiple times and
committing
when
suicide.
she took her life. Like, it's like, dude, whoa, hang on. This is like dark stuff. And we know that this is a damaged woman. We know that, that Lou comes out, she cuts herself and she self-harms and everything. So I found myself looking at this guy and being like,
but like,
what's your deal,
you can tell
weirdo?
just in this cameo of this like very revered French actor. This is the guy from Diving Bell and the Butterfly. That the mom killed herself to him. Lou ran away. It happened to him. She cuts herself.
A very self-centered.
Just like Ruben, right?
Ruben to
Which
him.
makes sense.
And so they get to say.
Yeah.
Also, if I understand if you're home alone making breakfast for yourself, that's fine. But if somebody's going to come over and you're going to feed them, put some shoes and socks on, please. Like he remained barefoot.
If you are home alone and someone's coming over and you don't want them to come over, try heating up your doorknob, right? Maybe put a blowtorch by your door,
break some
right?
ornaments, and then you definitely want shoes and socks on.
Tie a paint can to a rope and fucking swing that shit around and see what happens.
Swing that, dude. Man, that probably fucked that guy up so good. How long could you guys sit quietly in a room?
5 minutes. I don't think I would instantly punch a donut and punch the wall.
Attack the donut?
I would probably slowly eat the donut to try to make that distract me. Just like a crumb at the time.
You guys ever had the idea to slowly eat something? And that just means, like, I'm going to enjoy this over the next hour. And that just means that it's really gone in 30 seconds. Like, I'm going to.
But at least it's not the 10 seconds it normally is.
I don't even like aspire to that anymore. I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to cram this. Like this, what he did to that donut with his fist is what I would do to that donut with my mouth. I would just jam it all into my mouth in seconds and then be like, okay, what now?
Why, Greg, every time you do that, you pull out a fish bone?
I have to say one thing. I like sign language is very cool. And there was a movie called Wit, and it had a very small scene about like being funny in sign language. One thing I definitely like in sign language is addiction. They have the right word for that. The fact, especially if you're like in recovery, actually having to do the fishhook thing to yourself, I think you really have to admit you have a problem. If to sign it to people, you have to fishhook yourself in that way.
Is Wit with Emma Thompson?
Yes.
Wit?
I believe
Wit is this movie that I've never seen, nobody has seen, but when people talk about like the best performances of the last 20 years, it's always brought up. Like apparently she's fucking amazing in this movie. Wit
is amazing, especially if you like witty dialogue and like not just to have it be part of what you're watching, but instead have it be like dissected and like, you know, wit really looked at as the object, the center of a film. It's good for that. Well, that is the end of Speed Round. It is time to move on to awards. That smell. That wonderful smell.
It's the smell of metal.
It's the smell of metal. Hot metal. The awards have been heating all night, and now they're red hot, and they're ready to be given out. It's awards season.
Tense.
Now, as you know, this movie did not win any Oscars because temporally we are out of joint with that right now. So,
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But that doesn't mean that it can't win some awards right here. And in fact, let's give it some. So, this one is like such a biggie. Sometimes it's crazy that this is just an award because we have to wait all the way to the end to talk about it. But pound for pound performance, is this a slammy D, Mike?
I think I would love to be punk rock enough to really talk about Joe and Paul Raci. And I think he is an amazing actor and does a great job in his. But I think Riz Ahmed is undeniable in everything is in, but particularly this. And so often this kind of movie, you can see the person chewing the scenery and you're like, the whole movie's you, bro. You don't have to kick it up that notch. And I don't think he does. And he's just an interesting,
including multiple scenes where he is screaming at the top of his lungs, destroying.
But it's still, it just feels really natural. And because he has the lows as well. I don't know. He's so good, man.
What do you say, Ryan? Dare you disagree with that?
I can, and maybe this is because of build-up. Maybe it's because I heard for so long that the reason this movie exists is so Riz Ahmed could just dazzle us. But I think it's really hard to get away from Paul Raci. Like, and there's so many times that we can point it out. We talked about the scene where Ruben says, "I got the surgery," and he's kind of cocky, he's feeling good, and he just sits there. And it's easy to be like a leader in name, I should be the leader because I feel like I have the biggest dick, but the way that he does it's because he's the one who makes the hardest decisions, and you watch him break by making this decision, and I have to choose my people over you, this kid I love. But the other scene I want to talk about too is when Ruben and Lou are in the office. And
when they first meet him?
Yeah, when they first meet him, and Ruben and Lou are like arguing, like, I'm not going to give up my phone. I'm not going to, we're not going to separate. We'll just live in the big silver van that we have. Mm-hmm. And just his way of continuing, of just saying, like, I'm going to ignore your response, sort of. And I'm just going to keep, like, asking you the questions I need to ask. And I will only accept the answers that I want to hear. Like, there is a, air of immaturity to the performance, like, he's not a well-trained actor like Riz is, but it's not in a way I don't know, we went to the Ozarks and filmed with real Ozarkians. Like I think he steals this movie straight up.
It's so exciting to see an actor who is usually only cast because he's kind of goofy looking, which is like so dehumanizing, really, be three-dimensional and be human. And yeah, as you said, Ryan, that scene where you can tell, like, yeah, for him, leadership is you will take on the pain of leadership because leadership is an awful thing to have to endure because of what you have to do. And when you're dealing with addicts, you just have to have boundaries that break your heart, and I don't think it's punk rock. I'm going to give it to you, Ryan. I don't know. I know this is Riz Ahmed's like movie or whatever, but oops, this guy slipped in and he just took it. Like, and I think it's because he didn't try to do that. It's because he just lived in his performance. The end of the scene where he says, "You can't even live here. You have to leave right now." The camera lingers on him in a way that the camera doesn't generally linger on actors after a scene, and it feels almost behind the scenes for a second, and you feel like you're seeing the actor really be very upset. Like that was a cool moment. It felt like you were almost outside the movie for a second, but not. But what hurt.
What I didn't see is the director trying to do a thing. You know, like it wasn't like I think that you can make the argument that the last shot that we get is a little. Directory,
Well, like, let's talk about directory stuff right now. Let's move on to that.
But I think that leaving the camera on Joe in that moment didn't feel like, oh, I see what you're doing, director. It felt like, no, we have to sit here at this table with him. Like,
it felt like a found moment, and that the director, found it as well and left it in the movie because it was a real thing that was not planned for, but just like a little bit of truth that existed sort of on its own. But how about director moment? What is the we don't really know this guy yet. It's his rookie performance, but what do we think his signature moment is? Let's go with you, Mike.
So he has throughout like a handheld camera style, right? It feels like docky, like he's in there. But I think the lingering is a huge one because it happens the time I'm going to zoom in is when Lou is just done with Ruben. She's just hopping in a car, and she's like, nope. And Ruben freaks out. Normally it would end there, and you just see him like kick his feet on the asphalt and then go like sit on the step of the RV. Like it again lingers longer than a normal scene would.
Okay, so yeah, just like that hanging out with him after it feels like sort of the emotional closure of the scene. What do you say, Ryan?
Same thing. Little different. I guess like 30 seconds before that, this guy does like a ton of work to make you know that you're never going to be like tricked or fucked up by the camera. Like he's not going to pull any tricks. That the scene is very clearly handheld, like Mike said, but it's the argument before of Lou and Ruben almost predicting the future, that it's not just going to be 90 days or 4 months or whatever it is. Like they know that this is it, and the camera moves way more than any other part of the movie. It's moving around the cab, and Ruben just has to not let her get in the cab. And they're both sort of acting out in their own way, and he doesn't just tripod it like so much of the other, like the rest of the movie. And like, that's not to talk shit on the rest of the movie. Like, like still cameras are important for so much of the other scenes, but this one, to have the action of, it's not an action scene like the Chitauri aliens are coming. It's an action scene like there's a taxi here and we have a timeline. The taxi's going to leave, and it fills your chest with, oh my God, what is going to happen? Who is it? 0, 1, or 2 people about to get in this cab, and he gently makes you feel that tenseness.
Ryan, I like that. That's a good moment because the camera is still throughout the entire movie, and that sort of earns then the feeling of that action in that moment. And I don't think it's something that, it's not one of these director moves that you feel and you're like, I see he's doing something here. I think it's one that you kind of blend into, because I didn't even realize that like there was that amount of action in it until you brought it up.
Yeah, it's not like a 3-minute take with no cuts. It's not like, look at me, I'm a director.
Right. 2020 is pretty good at not delivering cringe. Does this movie give us cringe, Ryan?
Okay. The best that I could come up with, because this movie is clean as shit as far as that goes, is Ruben didn't know that he was going to be taken on a tour, and part of that was a classroom full of like 10-year-olds. But once he's there, his shirt just says "jism." Like he's just around 30 deaf children, and it says Jism right there.
I like how when he walks into that classroom, there's one handsome, cool kid, and right away they are both like, "Hey, we're on each other's level."
I got you, bud.
We are peers. Mike, did you cringe at any moment?
I did, but not in the normal way you cringe. When they meet back up in Paris and they're making out, her hand kept going on his head, and I thought she was going to rip out the implant. I kept just like, oh.
She also says gypsy, which is not a great term to be using.
And then she spits on a kid who is just asking for $1. It was really rude of her.
But let's see. I'm gonna go with that making out. I think, Mike. I'm gonna give it to Mark on that one. Everything about that is a pretty cringy moment when two people mid makeout realize they no longer have any chemistry. That's just everybody wants to just turn into liquid and just float away. Float away. So this next award is called Riz I'm Mad. It's the crankiest Riz Ahmed moment. Ryan, what is the biggest, freakiest moment for you in this movie?
I mean, this movie is filled with FYC in, not like bad ways. He has so many moments. But as far as like the biggest outburst, the one that hit me the most was in the bed, just in the same scene that Mike was just talking about, and him saying that it's okay, and then they hug and cry, and then there's a part of me and him that was thinking he's going to say, it's okay, we can break up. And she's going to be like, no, we will never. And then they hug and they sob because this is it, It's definitely the end of the relationship. And it is like this huge threshold of maturity that the two of them have crossed. That's my most emotional outburst from Ruben that I thought that was the most important and best.
All right. What do you say, Mike?
I went with the title and really focused on the mad, and I think it's going to be the scene that, like, when this movie is seen more talked about is the donut smash punch ball, and then he even starts saying, "You fucking idiot," and he's talking loud. He can't hear it. It's just like that habit that's built in him is to talk out loud, so he's like muttering and just destroying everything around him. The donut, that's like his food for the day, and he's still so mad he destroys it. So I feel like it captures where he's at there.
And is he rebuilding so nobody notices that he smashed it, or so that he can do it again in 1 second?
I don't even know. He is like just barely contained rage at that point, and it slips out a little bit at the donut. Mark, I'm going to go with Mike on that one, because that, to me, that is what anger feels like. Like, just that barely, like, I want to just like smash something, and then as soon as you do, you're like, whoops, shouldn't have done that.
I can put it back together.
People don't like it when you do smashies. If there's ever a house to just like smash something, not actually damage, but just like make a lot of noise, I guess that'd be the one. Most metal moment, Mike.
We see him get the surgery. We see him get the cochlear surgery.
Yep, we sure do.
The bloody ear is on the big screen, and there's a drill, and it sounds very similar. As an old fogey who doesn't really listen to the metal of the kids, I thought maybe metal was just playing because the way these drills were going in unison. And I think all of that, the visuals and sonically, it all felt pretty damn metal.
Pretty metal. Ryan, what do you think?
I mean, when this movie sort of does dabble in tropes and cliches as far as, getting this person to become whole again, one of them is I'll take handsome kid, I'll take him outside, and it's the halfway point it's the turning point of the movie when he goes from too cool for school rock star to person who wants to be a part of the community, and they start banging on the metal slide, and they put their ears down to the metal, and that's how they're talking to each other, like
because that's the sound of metal.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that this movie purposefully has a title as Double Entendre. Like, this is the turning point of them putting their heads down, him becoming family, and the sound of metal is what saved him, not what destroyed him.
Ryan, I like that. That is a very good answer. And what's funny about that is that should just be the moment where he's like, I'm going to go be a better person now. But that's never how it works. It's always like he sees that he's about to grow into a better person, and he's like, should I maybe get back up on my old bullshit just one last time just to see if that works?
I should fight against it for like an hour, right? I'm going to fight against it for an hour, and then I'll be cool.
When we come back, we are going to talk about who won this show and whether or not The Sound of Metal has what it takes to go into our bracket. Well, will this movie go deep into the bracket? What do we think, guys? Do we think that, we don't have a bracket yet, we don't know what movies are in, what movies are out? Do we think this one has what it takes to get into it or to be movie of the year?
I think this movie is great. I have very little quibbles or quabbles with it. But like we talked about at the beginning, I think it might be too intimate and small, and the movies that tend to end up in the bracket are either giant popcorn spectacles or, God damn, isn't this talking about the nature of the world?
Which is bullshit. We should be pissed off about that fact, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I do think it's horseshit.
We're the fucking authority that comes in and like actually lets people know what the movie of the year is. While watching this,
we are beholden to Letterboxd, though. We kind of like edit what Letterboxd does, but like there are a lot of ways in which we do kind of accept what they give to us. And if this were like, if we were 10 years in the future, would this even be a Letterboxd movie?
I mean, yeah, like it's possible that like it doesn't even have a chance to be in contention. But I also think that if it did, it wouldn't because of what Mike said. Like I want to fight against what Mike said, but only like surface level and just know how we actually are. Watching the movie, the whole time I was like, this is fine, this is good. This is good. It's inarguably good.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately how I came out of it was it is the sum of its parts, which feels like a pejorative. Thinking about it since I watched it, talking to you guys, I think it is actually a lot more. I do think that there's a lot of amazing things going on that did.
It made for good conversation.
Yeah, and like, sound design was a big part. Riz Ahmed was a big part. But ultimately, to be in the Elite Eight, I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I think that you may be right. But were those the words of a winner? No, alas, they were not, Ryan. You scored 22 points, but you were pantsed in front of everyone when Mike scored 27. Current best friend just spanked your little bottom until it was redder still. Mike, that means you are my best friend now, and maybe forever if you keep this up.
That's so
could
weird,
be.
Man. It's so weird how you rate your friends.
That is the Sound of Metal show, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you next week. But until then, hey, do me a favor, would ya? And keep watching them movies.